Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Sometimes the best way to find a living is to stay right where you are and study with UAS online. Career-specific distance programs from the University of Alaska Southeast are the fastest way to increase your earning power.
We connect all over the world.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, rolling through the times again. Show times 5:30, almost set in stone now. APB, KUAC 9.4, 360 north, 7:30 as always, and 5 a.m. the following morning for Alaska Public Media. And on YouTube, shortly after 7 p.m., say 7 to 8. Anyway, moving on to satellite imagery today. Starting here down the southeast, a weak band right through there. Possibly a few sprinkles getting up to the southern areas here, but generally up to the north. Pretty good day today with some clearing and clear skies again, North Gulf Coast, up across the eastern interior. And then we have higher clouds pushing in as this front out to the west edges its way eastward. Actually a little bit better push to the east here in toward Bristol Bay and slower up to the north there. Still a pretty strong and sharp ridge of high pressure over the interior, but that's gradually shifting to the east. A break behind the front, all the wind and rain, or the strong winds and heavier precipitation slipping up to the north today as that main low center pulled into the Russian Far East, and some more clouds gathering there over the central Aleutians, and that spread some rain from Adak in toward Atka. It looks like it's bearing down on Nikolsky at about this time, with showers following in. And rolling that again, you can see right through here, it's pretty much just high clouds through here, rain back mainly along the coast, and then a mixture of precipitation up across Norton Sound, the Seward Peninsula. Actually, rain and snow inland areas here all the way up to the north, but the strongest winds, 40 gusts, 60 miles an hour in some areas along the Yukon Delta coast on up in advance of the front across the Chukchi Sea, with the strongest winds actually occurring over the northwest there, with Cape or Point Hope seeing gusts to about 60 miles an hour, and then lighter winds to the south here, especially excuse me, behind the front. Not too bad over the Pribilofs, and then more rain here pushing eastward across the central Aleutians, and high pressure not quite as strong as it has been, and the winds not quite as strong, but still pretty gusty in the channeled areas of the northern panhandle, and lighter on down to the south. And again, no change really over the east side of the state. And for tonight, that's going to persist, looking pretty good. VFR up along the eastern Arctic coast, right through the interior, into the Gulf of Alaska again, Prince William Sound, and panhandle fair conditions, variably cloudy, rain and snow showers, or snow showers just to the east of the area there, and still a threat of maybe some light rain showing up here in the extreme southern part of the area there as you get in toward Dixon Entrance. And we have another system here spreading wind and rain back up to the Alaska Peninsula. So this portion of the front actually starts to pull westward and becomes a warm front, and this moisture mostly pushing up to the northeast. So looking at some pretty gusty winds, especially this evening, continuing here from the actually St. Lawrence Island right up to the possibly Point Hope, and some snow along that front, nothing too terribly heavy, and showers falling in behind as the main storm there actually pulls back farther to the northwest. South of that intense low, good westerly wind flow coming across the Bering Sea, a couple of troughs bringing some showers in toward the Pribilofs, on down toward the Atka area, back to the west, all the way to Shimia. And looking at tomorrow, you'll see this system kind of deepens down to 977 millibars. And so some pretty good easterly winds there, brings a good shot of rain across Kodiak into Bristol Bay, and the warm front making for a mixed rain and snow pattern there over the southwest interior, staying relatively dry out along the coast there. And then the southwest flow continuing. Look for some light rain and snow across St. Lawrence Island, possibly up into the northwest interior, and ridging out here for a break, sliding across the Aleutians tomorrow. So not a bad day here for Adak and Atka. Still some shower chances for Nikolsky and Alaska Dutch Harbor, as well as the mainly the north side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then that storm bringing gale force winds back into the western Aleutians, and definitely some more rain. Otherwise, the southeast coast, not too bad, partly to mostly cloudy, probably more mostly than partly, with a few scattered isolated showers, but nothing really significant or heavy at all. And we're looking pretty good here along the North Gulf Coast again. A day much like we've seen for the last several days, all the way up again to the Arctic coast there. Should be pretty good. And this high, though, gradually weakening. You can see down to 1,015 millibars now. So that's going to continue to diminish those winds in over the northern southeast coast. And then the outlook for Thursday, just a weak high center here over the central interior, and mostly clear, very light winds again from the Arctic coast right down into south central Alaska. Mostly clear skies, and again cold temperatures, some areas again dropping well below zero across the east side Copper River Basin. And this trough will bring a chance of rain over the southern panhandle. Otherwise, up to the north, maybe some clearing. Not a bad day for Yakutat. Pretty good for the North Gulf Coast, just some clouds. Easterly winds will be on the increase, though, in advance of this front, which really isn't all that strong. And the precipitation will definitely stay west of the panhandle through Thursday, but that return flow east-northeast on the northwest side of the system here will keep a pretty good chance of light rain for Kodiak Island, and then some remnant leftover moisture kicking off a few rain or snow showers here from Iliamna Lake right up across the Seward Peninsula, and then a break along the coast, lighter winds, and the next front pushing in toward the Pribilof Islands, probably looking at possible gale force winds with that and rain, and that extends back down into the next low center that's developing south of the Aleutians. Temperatures this afternoon across the southeast coast, about like what we've seen, mid-40s to mid-50s, 56 at Klawock, and a 45 at Sitka, or 45 at Skagway. Sitka had 52, 51 at Yakutat, and there's a 45 at Cordova. Lower 30s here for the Sitna Valley, Cook Inlet, and then near 40 down toward Homer and Seward. Mid-40s there at Kodiak, and a 16, Gulkana. 20s up there in the Tanana Valley, Fairbanks up to 29. Otherwise, McGrath had 15, 10 degrees for at Yukon, and a 21 at Bettles. Anatuvik, 14 today, upper 20s Central Arctic Coast, 16 at Dead Horse, and then back up to 24 at Barter Island, 41 at Cape Lisburne, as that warm southeast wind rose temperatures up into the upper 30s here, even at Point Lay, and 40 there at Deering, 39 reported at Nome. And then quite a contrast here west of the Kuskokwim Mountains into the lower 40s all the way out to the coast, with Gamble up to 43, and 40s over the Alaska Peninsula, approaching 50, mid 40s out over the central Aleutians. Taking a look at tonight's lows, 30 to 40 degrees here, warmest over the southern areas of the Panhandle, and again back below zero, 10 to 20 below, Copper River Basin, all the way up to the southern slopes of the Berks Range. North of the Berks Range, milder though, teens to near 20, and even milder than that out to the west, staying above freezing here in the windy areas with the clouds and precipitation. Seward Peninsula, near or into the mid-30s here across the southwest coast, 40s for the peninsula. And the highs forecast for tomorrow, teens to near 20, Copper River Basin, and kind of a variety, mostly in the teens you get into the Yukon Flats. And the Arctic coast again, upper 20s to lower 30s to near 40 out farther west, 41 for Nome. upper 30s to lower 40s over the southwest interior there, with temperatures approaching 50 for Kodiak and mostly in the upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay, all the way out to the Aleutians. And flying weather tomorrow, again, the low conditions here, obviously where the front is kind of hung up, will be in the west with IFR, the Alaska Peninsula, and areas of IFR all the way up to especially the southern slopes of the Berks Range there, VFR to the north. VFR again here for the east side, and possible marginal VFR, again the southern panhandle with that band of moisture across Dixon Entrance. Really not too bad out here over the Aleutians. Look for some marginal stuff for the Pribilofs and from Amchitka westward to the Komodorskis. For the afternoon, really not much of an eastward progression here, and the IFR areas tend to dissipate and become a little less extensive, but marginal VFR definitely for Kodiak Island. VFR here, Alaska Peninsula from Nelson Lagoon all the way out to Adak, and then some IFR out there to the west. So passes, no change from what we've seen the last several days. VFR, Salines visibility is unlimited for Lake Clark and Merrill, as well as rainy and windy. All VFR again tomorrow. Isabel, same forecast. No change from Antasta, Tanita VFR. Portage open. Chilcoot and White, another great day. And for the freezing levels, up to 10,000 feet here, that persistent southerly flow, and 2,000 feet right up into the Chukchi Sea area, and then down a little bit here through the interior, of course at the surface, down to the North Gulf Coast, and then you're looking 2,000 to 6,000 feet across the panhandle. Icing tomorrow, kind of a pretty good swath here of icing of the rime variety, light to very isolated moderate rime variety, mostly above about 5,000 feet, Kodiak, Bristol Bay, on up toward Norton Sound. It gets a little more discontinuous here as you head up to the northwest, and areas of possible icing out here to the west, mostly in the showers, and then with that next system, it becomes a little more widespread out west. And for the winds aloft for tomorrow, you see this still a pretty good ridge, but getting pretty narrow here across the eastern interior, and a strong jet here coming just south of the Aleutians, takes a turn to the north, 100 knots all the way up to the Arctic coast, more like 60 knots back out toward Point Hope, and then northerlies at about 30, coming in across roughly Yakutat or so on down to the south. For 9,000 feet, we're looking 5 to 15 knots, mostly out of the east or east-southeast for the Panhandle, right up into south-central Alaska. Pretty light winds here over the east side once again, but the Arctic coast, maybe up to 25 knots, 20 to 25 here over the interior. And still a band of pretty good winds, 40 to 45 knots, Kodiak Island, along the southwest coast, reaching 50 knots there around St. Lawrence Island. Northwest winds, 35 for the Pribilofs to 45 there, eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula area, and 40-knot winds in advance of the next system out toward Chimia. Same pattern at 3,000 feet, easterlies, 40 knots here, Kodiak Island, maybe even the Barrens, into northern Bristol Bay, and then they kind of diminish and then get back to 50-knot winds there toward the Bering Strait. Northwest, 25 to 40 knots coming in around this low center from the northwest, and 30 to 40 knot winds pushing into the western Aleutians. So turbulence-wise, we're looking pretty good, pretty smooth here, the Arctic coast through the interior to the Gulf of Alaska, Panhandle, nothing too serious. And occasional moderate chop below about 6,000 feet with those stronger winds with that next system that's hanging south of the area there. And also up here, still under the influence of that big storm over the Russian Far East. So the more bumpy stuff lifts north of St. Lawrence Island tomorrow, but still the western Seward Peninsula to Kivalina on up to Point Hope could be pretty bumpy yet, and then more turbulence again out west with the next system. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
We got Mount McKinley in the background, and you're looking real good. Yeah, roger. We'll be going downhill, dragging it down, and then take a look at the tracks and feel the snow, and then possibly land.
Okay, well, I'll circle over you and keep an eye on you. I'll mark you down.
Okay, we'll be breaking off underneath you.
Okay, we'll stay up.
And usually I go through a gump, the word gump, meaning gas, undercarriage, crop, mixture, crop, gump, G-U-M-P. And that generally gets me set up for landing. So my gas is on both tanks, my undercarriage is in the ski position, locked. My mixture at this altitude should be about 15 GPH at this setting. I know the elevation of the glacier is where we'll be landing is about 7,000. The light is good, but we don't have any sunlight right on the spot. We'll be coming in high, taking a go over, drag our skis, take a look at it, get a feeling for the depth of the snow, and then turn around. If the snow doesn't feel like it's too deep, we'll turn around and land. This also gives us a feel of the glacier of how it's rolling. That's okay. We're just feeling the snow out is what we're doing here. Feels like we got a good snow pack. It's all right. We've got probably about a foot of snow or so on top of a hard pack, so we're not going to disappear into the powder or anything.
How does it feel, Doug?
Yeah, it feels good, Lowell. We've got about, feels like about a foot of snow on there on top of a good pack. I think it'll be real good. I'm going to go on in and land, and it looks like they got a big hole there where somebody was camping. And we'll mark that and probably pull up there. It seems like a good flat spot.
Okay, well, I'll come in after you. I'll notice that hole. I want to be sure to miss that one, too.
Okay, doke. So we're on final southeast port.
Okay, I see you.
This is the touchy part now, because now on our way in, there's no chance for a go-around. You're just going straight in. All right. I lost my reference. We're going to have to go by and drop those bags off. We'll need you to hold the bags real tight and kind of hold your hand outside the window. And then when I say now, towards the bottom of the hill there, that's where we'll have to drop them at the bottom. That'll give me a reference. Go ahead and throw them both out at the same time, and that'll give me a line also. Okay, now. I think he tried to blow his hat clean off, I think. I think you can wait in here if you like. We probably won't be very much longer. Let's, yeah, watch the door so it won't. Matter of fact, could you shut this one so it won't blow? Okay, that's good. You wouldn't think about it, but one of the more important factors would probably be just a real good shovel. If you ever need a shovel, you'll want a good one. Sometimes the cheap, lighter models that are easy to pack will break or fail on you. It's real important to have a good snow shovel when you're going into these areas and operating on skis. Sometimes you really need it and you want it to work for you.
Welcome back. Strongest winds along the Panhandle tomorrow will be down to the south here over the southern areas, southeast, east-southeast, up to 30 knots. Clarence Strait out along the south coast here, where seas will be 12 to 13 feet. And they lighten up and become more east-northeast here, down to 20 knots and 15 there on the north side. Lynn Canal down to 25 knots, still good enough for a small craft advisory, and about 20 knots or so here through the central inside waters. And then on Thursday, no change here for Lynn Canal, 25 knots or so, and small craft advisories for most of the coastline here, and pretty much southeasterly, 25 to 30. Seas highest here down to the south, 12 to 13 feet. Small craft advisory for Clarence Strait, southeast 25 knots, and east or east-northeast, depending on whether you're in Frederick Sound or Stevens Passage here, and seas at about 4 feet. For the North Gulf Coast, easterly winds 20 increasing to 25 knots as you head west across the Barren Islands, 30 knots there off Kodiak. Northeast 15 for Prince William Sound, northern Cook Inlet, and then they pick up to 25 knots south of the Forelands to 30 knots over Shelikof Strait. And then for Thursday, Cook Inlet 10 to 15, still northeast, northeast 20 to 25, strongest for Shelikof Strait again. Gale warnings, northeast 35 knots there, east side of Kodiak Island. Small craft advisories for the Barrens up into the western coast here, and then dropping back to 20 knots as you head east. For Bristol Bay, east 25 knots tomorrow. We've got northwesterlies 25 here, increasing to 35 knots south of the Alaska Peninsula, swinging around to the east at 30 knots there from Sitkinak to Chignik. And then for Thursday, west winds at 10 knots for Bristol Bay. So pretty light there, kind of ridge axis moving over the area. And then a big shift to the north here, 30 knots there from Sitkinak to, say, Chignik, maybe Castle Cape. And then 30 knots out of the northwest for the southern Alaska Peninsula. And actually, they'll be lighter than that. Could be down to 20 knots there to the west of that, or in the western part of that zone. For the Fox Islands, northwest 25 tomorrow, and westerly at 30 knots from Nikolsky on out to Adak and Atka, and then south 35 knots west of Adak all the way to Shemya. 50 knots, so looks like at least a narrow band of storm force winds there over the far western Aleutians. Otherwise, gales drop down to 20 to 25 here for the central areas. Back up to 35 knots through this zone here, and south 35 for the northern Fox Islands, southwest 25 there on the Pacific side. Looking at the southwest coast here, south of Nunivak Island, east at 20, and then north of Nunivak Island, we've got small craft advisories extending there up across St. Lawrence Island, southwest 25 for St. Matthew and the Pribilofs. And then on Thursday, lighter winds here along the coast, south to southeast at 15, 20 knots St. Lawrence Island, gales St. Matthew Island down across the Pribilofs, 35 knots, 16-foot seas. And along the Arctic coast, southwest 20 for the central and east side, turning more easterly here as you slip over to Demarcation Point. Otherwise, good stiff south wind at 30 knots on the west side with gales from Cape Beaufort down to Cape Thompson, and then 30 knots on down to Bering Strait. And then the outlook for Thursday, lighter winds, 20 knots here from Wales to Cape Thompson, and 25-knot winds, small craft advisories there along the western capes. Light southeasterlies here for the west side, And then mostly an east wind at roughly around 15 knots. It shouldn't be much stronger than that. Seas running 4 to 5 feet. And for tonight, again, looking like this, still pretty fair. Really no change here over the eastern interior down to Prince William Sound. Mostly cloudy, the panhandle there, risk of some light rain, extreme south. And then this system developing in the south to southeast wind flow on the west side of that pushes that front back to the west, and it becomes a warm front. So look for areas of rain spreading across Bristol Bay. Mixture of conditions actually anywhere over the interior to the north to probably mostly snow up to the northwest. Showers behind, still windy conditions, especially this evening from St. Lawrence Island right up across the Chukchi Sea there in the northwest coast. And westerlies out over the Aleutians with a fair amount of shower activity. Then for Wednesday, the system still south of Kodiak, but that southeast flow pushes rain from Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay and along the warm front up to the north. Might shut off late tomorrow afternoon for Kodiak, maybe not, but northwest winds pretty brisk there for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, the chance of showers. The next system pushing into the west moves rain and wind from the Pribilofs to Adak and Atka. Nice over the interior.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.